Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Puff Puff Planet. I'm doing a solo one this time, and I'm going to walk you through today what I like to call where do you start, grandma, or really anybody on cannabis. This is a question I'm asked often in the store, a lot from my own personal family and friends, who are looking to get into cannabis, who are looking to have someone they love or care about get into cannabis for a multitude of reasons. But, the first thing I like to start with is a few precursor questions that I like to ask. My first question is always, have they ever consumed cannabis before? And if so, in what method? This is important, to know if they've had any previous good or bad experiences with cannabis, if there's anything that, they want to avoid when it comes to cannabis. So for me, someone who is a cannabis, who has used cannabis in the past and is now coming back to it, a lot of things have changed in the industry. A lot of products have changed. Dosages have changed. So that's, kind of the main question I like to ask. And I also just like to know if they've never ever touched cannabis in their life, because I want to, 100% make sure that this is the best experience possible for them. And if they say, yeah, I've consumed cannabis before, I'll say, in what method? So did you smoke it? Did you eat it? Did you drink it? I mean, it's probably unlikely that they might have drank it or eaten it in the past if they were, younger, or in the time smoking was probably the most common way. But I would also ask, were you a heavy user or just kind of like a social user? For me, that actually helps build, do you have any bit of a tolerance? Do you know the effects that it's had on your body? From there, I'll say, what are you or they trying to use it for? So if you're trying to use cannabis for like medicinal purposes, that's a huge factor as to like what I might steer you towards or what I may want to put you on a regimen of. There's just so many products in the market that have multitude of uses. So, or it's just someone that's saying, my grandma just needs to relax, or my mom just needs to be able to chill out. She's got some anxiety. I want her to be able to come home and relax after work or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pain relief or, anything that's a big ailment of yours, but it could just be like for a recreational use. So from there, I'll say, what is their preferred method? Are they trying to inhale it? Are they cool with inhaling it? Do they want to smoke? If they don't want to smoke, a lot of times when they're older, they usually want to try an edible because they're not necessarily comfortable with inhaling, or their doctor isn't. They may have asthma or COPD or things like that keep them from being able to actually inhale a product. So it's just important to know too, like if it's, hey, they want to eat it, but they can't have a lot of sugar. That's important for me to know as well. So, and I also like to ask, do they take a lot of other drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs, so we can factor that kind of into the regimen use of when they're taking their cannabis, how much they're taking their cannabis. There's just a whole lot of questions that I like to ask. So I'm just going to kind of dive into what are the methods and that I would recommend to, and that I have recommended to my own grandmother, my own parents, my own aunts, uncles, friends, family, when they're trying to get into cannabis. Because I will always say this, but I never want to scare anyone away from cannabis. I want them to, even if they walk away from this going, it's not for me, I didn't enjoy it, or I didn't want it, not because it was like overwhelmingly high, but they just didn't like the effects, because just like alcohol isn't for some people, cannabis isn't for all people. But I want them to walk out of it having more of an open mind, saying that, anyone who uses cannabis moving forward, that they understand why, or they can see a little bit more into why this plant is so cool and all of its benefits that you can get from it. So I'm going to start off with kind of the one that I think goes underrated the most, and that is tinctures. So tinctures are an alcohol-based, an alcohol is the solvent to get THC extracted from the plant. So it is an alcohol-based product that, of course, all the alcohol is, burnt off in production. So you're not taking in any of that alcohol that way. But that is the solvent used to get this product. The reason why I say it's like the least popular or least recommended is it's not like a gummy. It's not exciting. It's not like a flavorful product, but it is a very, very useful product. And it is a very, very specific product. These products, what's nice about them and what I like about tinctures is they typically, I would call it what's called a 2 onset times. So tinctures are an oil. It'll typically found in a bottle like this. So you'll see it in a bottle like this. It'll have a dropper on it. And when you open it, it'll just kind of have a glass or a plastic syringe. A lot of times you might not be able to see it, but it has kind of a dosage on it. It's usually like milliliters or whatever kind of they choose to put on their bottle. But for the most part, it's an oil in a container that is like usually an MCT coconut oil base because MCT coconut oil is actually really good. It has high absorption rates so in your body. So it allows for the THC to be like readily and easily absorbed into your system. So that's why a lot of these companies choose to use that as like the carrier for the THC. So when you're taking a tincture, the reason I say there's 2 onset times is because when you take this tincture, the way that I recommend that you take it, and a lot of times the actual packaging will recommend this too, is you put a few drops of it, whatever the dose that you determine with your bud tender, or, today I'll go over kind of proper dosing, whatever dose you determine, I would suggest you take that amount, you squeeze the dropper under your tongue, and you actually let it sit there and hold it for like a sublingual like absorption for about 30 to 60 seconds. I would say about a minute. If you just hold it there, it'll actually get absorbed. And then you will just kind of swallow whatever's left in your mouth, and you'll feel the effects of that maybe another 20 to 30 minutes later. And again, tinctures, why I like them is they come in a lot of different ratios of cannabinoids. So when I'm telling someone to try THC for the first time, if it's not flower, because even in flower form, I could suggest this, but I would say, in flower form, you'd have a high CBD content product, which is very, very hard to find in the industry, unless you're smoking, you're buying hemp flower and you're buying regular THC flower, and you're, going ahead and making a blend of that in a joint or in a bowl or whatever way you choose to smoke it. But what's nice about tinctures is they actually will take the time to take different cannabinoids and combine them. So the one that I have in my hand here specifically, again, no kind of call out to these certain companies, but they just do a really good job. They're vendors of mine. We carry them in our store in Planted. So something that I really like is this brand Rise. So they just actually really recently released this product, but it is their AM tincture. This contains THC, THCA, and CBG. So you've probably heard, if you've watched other podcasts, a little bit about some of these other cannabinoids and what that means and what they are. But obviously we know THC is the psychoactive, cannabinoid that gets us high, that we all like. It doesn't just get us high. We know that. It's got a lot of medicinal properties, anti-inflammatory, pain relief, all of that kind of fun stuff. But it's, big sister, as I like to call it, THCA, is the acid form of that molecule, so of that cannabinoid. And that actually provides, without the psychoactivity, all of the medicinal effects that THC does. So it's nice to also combine that in there as well, because it's almost like an enhanced medicinal effect without the enhanced psychoactivity. So you're getting like double the benefit with like half the psychoactivity. And then CBG is known to be one of like my favorite cannabinoids. It is a neuroprotectant. It's very good for gut health. It actually, is one of those cannabinoids that I really recommend for a lot of people who have cancer. It's just something, this cannabinoid has a lot of health benefits. So they call this an AM tincture because CBG is actually known to help focus. Help focus you, is what I kind of meant to say there, but it'll actually help you focus. It'll keep your attention span right on track. So there's actually gummies in the market that use CBG for this. They market it for that exactly. So it's kind of a nice, while it's not like a sativa blend oil that you can find in some tinctures, it is, a ratio of cannabinoids that could be a little bit more uplifting and help you carry you through your day. And they're definitely not going to make you tired or sleepy. So that's what's nice about this Rise tincture. And this bottle comes in, again, tinctures come in all different ratios, but I believe this is 200 milligrams of each cannabinoid in the bottle. And so from there, I like to tell people a proper starting dosage with THC. In my opinion, people think it's too low. I would say 2 milligrams. But I personally would rather someone I know, I love, or that I'm recommending or giving advice to feel absolutely nothing the first time they go to try cannabis than feel too much and feel uncomfortable. And so for some people, 2 milligrams might not even touch them. And I would say a good portion of people wouldn't feel 2 milligrams really in any heavy way, especially when you're combining it with the other cannabinoids. But in the scenario that you find someone who takes 2 milligrams and it absolutely does do what I, think it could do to some people, and it has done to people that I know, I want them to be able to feel comfortable at that dose. And I'm certain that if you take a 2 milligram dose and you feel it and you have a very high sensitivity to THC, that you're still not going to feel overwhelmingly uncomfortable. So that's why I like to lean towards really low dosing. And that becomes, anywhere from when you're taking your tinctures, which I would say the downside to tinctures is that sometimes they're hard to dose. Being that it is an oil, being that it is in a dropper, all of those kind of things are at play in terms of how you dose yourself. Some people choose that they don't like the taste of coconut oil on its own. So they'll actually mix it in like their morning coffee or their morning tea or whatever. But I tell people when you're taking tinctures and you're trying to use it for like a medicinal purpose, to do it regularly, to do it on a timely manner. Try to keep notes. Anytime you're starting a cannabis journey, especially if it's for a medicinal purpose, notes are your best friend. So to have like a little book or just the notes in your phone and you're writing took 2 milligrams of XYZ, at this time felt X, so you can also start to gauge your metabolism in your body. That plays a huge factor into a lot of these products that you're ingesting, orally, that you're eating, that you're taking in, through your mouth. It's just super important to think about, if you have a fast metabolism, there's a good chance that you feel the effects of cannabis quicker or they last a less amount of time for you. And it's the same thing of we're born with genetically different and we are all given different enzymes and the enzymes in our body that we inherit from our parents. So, some people, there's kind of 3 categories of people that I might have mentioned in podcasts before, but you have a high ability to break down distillate, a moderate ability to break down distillate, which is THC oil that you'll find in most of these products, or a very low ability to break down THC distillate. And that means you're going to be a super, super sensitive to it, or you're not going to be that sensitive at all. And so for you, if you're on that low ability to break it down, means, you don't really feel the effects of THC as heavily as others. You're going to probably have a higher dose, or you're going to have to find your specific way to get high. And that works for your body. And so it's a lot of times too, if you have a low ability to break down distillate with those enzymes, you might choose to go to something like smoking that is immediately breaks that blood-brain barrier and doesn't require your liver to break it down, or a fast-acting edible, and works in kind of a very similar fashion. So, from there with the tinctures, I've got, just like I have an AM tincture, I also have a PM tincture. The difference between this one is actually no THCA and there's no CBG, but it is THC, CBD, and CBN. So, some of the more calming cannabinoids, we know CBN, we've talked about before, is a cannabinoid that people have been starting to use in place of melatonin. It is very naturally occurring cannabinoid. It helps with, it's more sedative, so it is a sleepy cannabinoid. But it definitely helps with that nighttime, staying asleep or getting asleep, falling asleep stuff. And as well as CBD, we know it to be pretty relaxing and chill for your anxiety. So combining these 3 things, and the THC, always a good thing to have in there, of course. Whether or not, I tell people these are not high psychoactivity tinctures. You're not going, if someone comes in and they're I want to get high and go to sleep, because I like to be really high and then fall asleep. This isn't really the product that you want to give them, because there's just a lot more of those extra cannabinoids that, while I wouldn't necessarily make the claim that CBD, when used in conjunction, will take away your psychoactivity, it'll lessen some of the effects of the psychoactivity, and it can actually even, might sound contradicting, but enhance. And I mean enhance in the way that it enhances your high so that it's a more enjoyable high. So you're getting rid of some of those paranoia, anxiety, the bad things that you might get from THC if you consume it and they don't have a high tolerance to it. So for me, these products are really making sure that you can have a comfortable high that helps you really get relaxed and fall asleep. Not just a very overwhelming body high or head high, things of that nature. So what's really cool about tinctures is you can find them in CBD only forms. So if you're someone who can't have THC, you can find them with a CBD only. You can find them with CBD and CBG. You can find a CBN only tincture. So you're trying to get that sleep and not trying to get that THC. And I like these because there's really no sugar in them. As kind of comparative to your traditional edible in the market that has quite a bit of sugar. So for me, these are something that when someone comes in, and my grandma can't have a lot of sugar because XYZ, she's trying to get relief from this. This is something that I like to turn to and go, well, it's not that exciting looking or exciting to use. It does feel a little bit more medicinal when you're using it, but it's a nice product because it doesn't contain high amounts of sugar. And I like to think that it's actually, with those 2 ounce at times, can actually give a little bit of relief quicker than your traditional edible. So from there, I'll move into everybody's favorite, which is gummies. So gummies or like edible candy, essentially. So starting with gummies, I always, again, go to that 2 to 5 milligram dose for a starting dose. And I always want to see my bud tenders or my friends or family, when they're being recommended THC, I go, you need to recommend some CBD with it. You know, our market is so advanced, I guess, at this point, that we're starting to realize the benefits of having that CBD with the THC. It's not just about getting high now. It's about getting high and enjoying our high, or getting high and being comfortable, or being high and having some medicinal effects. So I grabbed a few products here. Strikingly enough, I've grabbed quite a few of the Wana brand products. You know, it's not shocking to me. The reason being is they've been a very mature company in the market for a long time. Not just in the Michigan market, but in Oregon and California, in Colorado, they're all over. So I brought with me today a multitude of gummies, and the one brand that I'm finding myself reaching for a lot with customers, and that I've brought quite a few in to show you guys, is the Wana brand. The Wana brand is super, super popular and has been in the market for a long time. So I like to think of them as a company that has done a lot of research and development into the products that they're bringing to the market. So Colorado, California, all of those kind of markets they have Wana. And you actually see, I'm always sad because in Michigan, we are like the last state to get the really cool products that Wana releases. So I'll show you one of their most recent products they released that's been doing really well in my store specifically. But they've done a really good job at doing CBD ratioed products. And that is something that I love. They make a quality product that's evenly dosed, that I know I can recommend, and people are going to enjoy the flavor, the texture, they're vegan, all those kind of things. They're actually don't melt either, which is kind of weird because there's not like much gelatin in them. So if you like leave them in your car or your purse in the summer or something, like they're not going to like melt into one like glob. So it becomes nice that way to be able to dose yourself in the summer if you take them with you. But the first one I'm going to bring up, and is newer and kind of the last like year or so that I've seen Wana have, is they have a pomegranate blueberry gummy that is a 5-to-1. So this gummy is really cool for a few reasons. It's a ratio of 5 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So this is like a really low dose of THC and a really high dose of CBD. And what that means is, for a first-time user going into gummies, and this is a regular edible, it's a traditional, not a fast-acting, so, you know, it takes a longer onset time and a longer duration is what that means for a traditional edible. So this gummy has 5 milligrams of THC and 25 milligrams of CBD. So for people who are starting, I would love to say that 2 milligram dose is, if you're going to only consume a THC gummy, I want you to take 2 milligrams or 2.5 milligrams, let's say, because there's no CBD there to like help you if your side effects or symptoms of like paranoia or anxiety or those things kind of kick in for you. But when I'm talking, you're mixing in 25 milligrams of CBD, I am comfortable and okay to recommend people a 5 milligram dose of THC in conjunction with that 25 milligrams. So when I'm looking at this, I go, all right, you can eat one of these gummies. So a lot of times in the market, you'll find the traditional gummies are made in like a 10 milligram piece. So you're going to want to like cut that into 4s or cut that into halves. Like at the end of the day, it's easier to build your dose than it is to go, you can't really go back. So once you take a gummy, you can always take another gummy, but you can't take the one you ate away. And so that's what I like to tell people is just, you know, until you find your optimal dosage, just eat like less than you think you need to eat. And that's like, I tell my staff that even people who have tolerance, if they're going into like a new brand of gummy and they're not sure, and that's kind of the thing I like to tell people is from brand to brand, even just how they choose to emulsify their THC, how they choose to mix it in, it matters. So if you have been eating one brand of gummies forever and you eat 50 milligrams, and then you're like, I'm gonna eat 50 milligrams of this other brand, it might blow you out of the water. It might not be exactly what you're expecting, just like your other brand. The ingredients are different, your body's breaking it down differently. So just a lot of things to think about. From there, if you're like, okay, I'm not that scared of THC, I can have a little bit more of psychoactivity than that 5-to-1. I would go, okay, the standard, Wana also has a 2-to-1 that I didn't bring, which is double the CBD to THC, which is kind of a really nice place to start, I would say, for people that aren't like, I'm super scared of being kind of high, but I want to make sure that I'm covered, my bases are covered. But where I would go from there, and this is what my father takes actually, is a 1-to-1 strawberry lemonade Wana there's a lot of one-to-one gummies in the market. So Wild makes a kick-ass one-to-one. There are some like lower end brands that are cheaper for one-to-ones. Chewy makes a one-to-one mixed berry gummy that is just as awesome. And it's right in that price point for some people. So, you'll find a lot of companies are working towards gearing to that market that wants to enter THC carefully, is how I will say it. But this is a hybrid gummy as well, so there's no indica or sativa effects, meaning no uplifting or really relaxing effects, so kind of a nice hybrid right in the center, carry you through your day. But no matter what, if someone's going into cannabis or THC, especially edibles, traditional edibles can be heavy hitters. They actually, what we're traditionally used to being high from is called Delta-9 THC. It's a little crash course I might have given you guys before, but I'm going to give it to you again. I give it to everyone who wants to go into cannabis. But Delta-9 THC is what your body converts THCA into when you eat or when you smoke cannabis. So when you smoke cannabis, it turns into Delta-9. That's what gets you high. You're building that high on traditional flower concentrates, things like that. When you eat an edible and your liver and your body digests it, your enzymes eat it up, it turns into 11-hydroxy-THC, which in some studies that I've read online have shown to be like 2 to 4 times stronger than Delta-9. So there are people who smoke weed, flower their whole life and then eat an edible for the first time. And they're like, I try to explain, like it's a different high, it's a different THC, like you don't have a tolerance to that. And, I get a lot of, I've been smoking weed longer than you've been alive and I'm fine. I don't need, I'm fine. I can eat whatever. I'm like, okay, try it. So they come back and they're like, that put me out. I was on the couch for hours. I was way too high. And it's one of those things that people don't realize, like your body can build a tolerance to Delta-9 and it can build a tolerance to 11-hydroxy. So it's one of those things that when you're eating a traditional edible that's not fast acting, to keep in mind that it's just actually a little bit heavier of a high. So when I'm like going into edibles, especially edibles with like anyone older than me, elderly, I'm like, okay, let's just kind of ease you into this. I will always personally, for my friends and family, recommend a fast-acting gummy, but I'm lucky I can do that now because that's kind of newer in the market. It's a newer product, something that exists now, but for the longest time, what you found in the market was traditional edibles. So no matter what, I tell my friends and family, reach for a one-to-one gummy. I don't care what brand. I mean, obviously, the like higher quality of the brand, the probably better experience you're going to, in quality, I mean, their doses are accurate. And, each piece is actually 10 this and 10 that, or 5 this and 5 that. So that's something that I like to recommend to people. Wana also came out when fast actings hit the market. They were actually kind of one of the first people I saw to do fast acting gummies in Michigan. When they came out, they did a strawberry margarita 1-to-1. Not everybody's favorite because like some people who smoke weed don't like booze or like whatever it is, but not a bad, it's just kind of like a lime flavored strawberry gummy. But these ones are cool because they are fast acting. When they first came out in the market and they hit the market, they were doing these in 5 milligram doses, and now they're doing them in 10 milligram doses. So, people wanted a higher dose in each gummy because, again, people's tolerances are increasing over time of taking these products. So I always recommend with a fast acting, I'm okay with your starting dose being 5 milligrams. Simply because it's still Delta-9. Now, it's a lighter high, the shorter onset time, a shorter duration of that high. So sometimes even though, I tell them, I'm like, it's easier to build your high with fast-acting gummies. So you can take like a 5 milligram and know for most people, within 20 minutes, how that 5 milligrams is feeling and how you feel from it. You might eat 5 and be like, I'm good. Or you might eat 5 and be like, I could eat another 5. So having that ability to do that within 20 minutes, and we live in a society where everything is like fast here, right now, I want that feeling right now. So when you eat a traditional edible, you're looking at 30 to, for some people, 90 minutes of an onset time. So you could take your edible and forget that you took it and then like eat it again because you're like 30 minutes later, you're like, I don't feel anything. And you eat another one and then 2 hours later, you're freaking screwed because you're so high. So, I mean, I've been there. I'm not just saying that I've been there from personal experience. The first time I ever ate an edible, nobody guided me. Nobody told me what to expect. Nobody told me like, this is a standard dose, and that's fine. No, maybe I could have done some research, but no one told me this is a standard dose. Wait this long to see how high you are. Like the edible I ate was like a whole 300 milligram bar or more. I can't even remember. But I remember it was a chocolate bar, and I ate half of it because I didn't know, right? Like I thought when I eat a chocolate bar at home, I eat half the chocolate bar. So I was like, whatever. I didn't know, like, really, honestly, truly didn't know what 300 milligrams even meant at all. So I ate half the chocolate bar, and like 25 minutes later, my friend's like, are you high? And I'm like, no, I don't feel high at all. So I ate the other half, being like, maybe you just got to eat the whole thing. Like, it's a chocolate bar. Who makes a chocolate bar? You're not supposed to eat the whole thing. So I ate the whole thing, and I sat on the couch for like 16 hours. Like, I didn't move. I was a statue. So for me, like, it wasn't horrible, right? Like, I was just super baked and couldn't even like talk to people truly. But at the end of the day, like, I could have had a way worse experience than I did. But I now know that 300 milligrams is not a starting dose for an edible, and it's not even a like one-time dose for someone with a tolerance sometimes. You know, I get people that come in, they're like, I can eat 2,000 milligrams and it doesn't touch me. Well, guy, you just don't have the enzymes for that, I guess. But at the end of the day, I don't want other people to have that experience that I did. Because I've also heard kind of horror stories. I've told some horror stories about accidentally giving my dad more RSO than I should have. And he wasn't comfortable like I was for 16 hours on the couch. I mean, that man was in a different universe. So for me, when I tell people, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer and be like, only eat 5 and feel nothing. Like, I want you, because what if you eat 5 and then you're like, that was pretty good, but now you know next time you can eat 10 or you can eat 7.5, whatever it is, but like build that dose. And that's kind of why I like fast actings, is because you can build your dose and know that, like, I like to microdose of fast acting gummies. I would eat like 2.5 milligrams. I think I brought like my favorite gummies are in here. So these Ripple green tea mangoes, taste amazing, but they are 2.5 milligrams of THC and 2.5 milligrams of CBD. So like, people call this like a baby dose, and whatever. I've been smoking weed and eating weed for like 8, 9, almost 10 years. That's fine. It's a baby dose, but I enjoy like not being so blazed. Like, I like to be high that like I'm very like aware of what's going on, but I'm still high enough to like giggle through it all. And so for me, I'll eat like this gummy. I'll eat one of these 2.5 milligram gummies. 15 minutes later, I'll eat another one. And then 15 minutes later, I'll eat another one. And then 15 minutes later, I'll eat a fourth one. So within like that hour, I ate 10 milligrams, but my high hits me in like these really cool waves. So I'll get like a little bit high, and then it'll come down and I'll get like a little bit high. So it keeps this like high going for me. And I tell people that too, like, say you're gonna, like, you even want to eat like a traditional edible and you want to build your high on that, like, you absolutely can. You can eat and then 30 minutes later eat your second half. So if you want to eat 10 milligrams, eat 5 milligrams, 30 minutes later eat 5 milligrams. So your high lasts a little bit longer, but it's not as like intense all at one time. So you can kind of ride that high out, which is a fun thing to do. I always recommend it to people, you know, like if you're trying to make it a whole evening thing, that's how you should do it. So you should like microdose your THC. You'll probably have like seen or heard of like people doing like meals that are full like microdose meals, because they like microdose their appetizers, microdose their main dish, microdose their dessert, because you don't want someone to be absolutely ripped, eat a 20 milligram appetizer, a 50 milligram dessert, and by the time they're at dinner, they're sleeping. So, it's important to realize that, like, it's not all about getting extremely, extremely baked. It's about enjoying that high, enjoying all of the waves that come along with it. But hey, if you want to get super, super ripped and eat 100 milligrams in edible, like, I can do that with you too. But when it comes to, like I said, with our grandparents, they're usually trying to treat some type of an ailment. Pain, CBD, of course, like, great for pain, great for anti-inflammatory, great for relaxing, anxiety. But if they come to you and they're like, I just can't sleep, so there's a gummy for that. there's an app for that. So for me, when I'm looking at, giving someone a dose of CBN to help aid in the sleep, like I mentioned with the tinctures, I would want to just release these, and they are super fun. They're the Fast Asleep by Wana, and they are their Dreamberry gummy, and they contain quite a few cannabinoids. They have THC, CBD, CBN, and CBG. So again, kind of all of my favorite cannabinoids in one gummy here. And the reason I really like this is the dosages are really quite perfect for someone who is coming into THC but wants some sleep. Because there's gummies that exist in the market that are 10 milligrams of THC to 2 milligrams of CBN. And I'm like, I want them to get that 2 milligrams of CBN, but I don't necessarily want them to have it with 10 milligrams of THC. So this product has 2 milligrams of THC, 15 Sometimes the dosage, if you look on the back of your products, is a little bit different because they do accurate dosing. But I think it's a 15 milligram CBD, 2 milligrams of CBN, and 2 milligrams of CBG. So that's their goal, is to try to have more CBD to offset that psychoactivity of the THC. But, I tell people when you're going into CBN, there's some products that you can find that have 10 milligrams of CBN. Well, CBN will make you tired. You really don't need much of it. So that 1 or 2 milligrams of CBN is going to do the job for you. So this was something that I actually, recommended to a friend's parent recently who was like, I want to sleep, but I don't want to be blown out of the water. What can I use? And I'm like, these are perfect. So we carry a lot of other, one of the most popular sleep gummies in our store now is the wild elderberry. They come in a couple different doses that they currently have. But there's wild elderberry, you've got the Cannabis PMs. There's so many different brands that when you come into the store that we'll be able to steer you towards, or any of my friends and family ask me, I just got to know where your tolerance is with THC for that. But if we're starting grandma on a sleep gummy, these fastest sleeps are awesome. But again, keeping it at that 2 milligram dose of THC, keeping it at a 1 to 2 milligram dose of CBN, and then, the other cannabinoids are just kind of like icing on top of it all. So from there, what you eat in a day, what I tell people all the time, there's so many factors that can impact your high with an edible. So you have to be patient when you're coming into cannabis, realizing that your journey is yours and that it is going to be different than your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your friend. The way and how quickly you get high and how it affects you and how you feel is going to be different. You can have a friend take something or smoke something and say, this did XYZ to me, and then you smoke it and it did literally the complete opposite. That's okay. Your friend didn't lie to you at all, because neurologically and physiologically, biologically, we're all different. So that's something I just like to always keep in the back of someone's head, is if you're coming into cannabis, you need to have a little bit of an open mind and realize that the product you try the first time might not be the perfect fit, and you got to be willing to try to make adjustments to that to see what's going to work for you. So with gummies, it's, your metabolism plays a huge role. Those enzymes you get from your parents play a huge role. What you eat that day or your diet plays a huge role. If you eat really fatty meals throughout the day, it kind of leaves a lot of bioavailability in your body to break down the THC. So you might feel like a more intense high. So it's something I always tell people to think about is you get the munchies and then you eat burgers and pizza or whatever. You're probably going to feel more high, honestly. And with all the options in the market, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. I want you to realize that that's a good thing. You can have choice paralysis sometimes, but work with a bud tender at your local dispensary, preferably planted, but anywhere you go, and try to find that perfect product for you. And again, if you're coming in to buy a product for somebody else, I want you to really bring in as much info about what they're trying to do with that product, their preferred use. Is it an edible? Is it smoking? Whatever it may be. So the last kind of product method I'm going to touch on, while there's still quite a few in the market that we could touch on, is actually vape cartridges. So something that is not my favorite to recommend, and it's just a personal thing, right? People love these, no hate, whatever. But when my family comes to me and they're like, I want something that's super discreet that I can take with me. Edibles can be that, but again, keeping a hot chocolate bar in your car or a chocolate bar in your car when it's hot isn't necessarily ideal, or a pack of gummies or whatever it may be. And again, some people just don't want that high amount of sugar intake. It is what it is. The market is so developed that there are so many types of vape cartridges that you can reach for, that you could grab. So someone who comes to me, like my mom, this is what my mom uses. She'll say, I want to try that vape cart, Victoria. I just only for once in a while. I'm not going to use it all the time, but I want to use it because I think it's really discreet, and it would be nice if I'm out and I have a headache or something's going on, I'm anxious, that I can hit this. So I recommend it to her. It's kind of one of the only brands I know in the market that does a 1-to-1 ratio cart. So Select, shout out to Select. They are an awesome company, been around, again, in the market for a long time, but they do a 1-to-1. They do a sativa, an indica, and a hybrid. So whether you're looking for it in the morning or at night or just kind of whenever during the day, there is a product for you from them. What I like about this is most distillate, which is THC cartridges, is a really high potency of THC, anywhere from 70, maybe even less, but 70 to 98% THC is very common in the market. That is a high amount of THC. And for someone who's coming into vaping, while you can maybe just take a baby rip, I don't want you to, if you accidentally take a big rip off of a vape cart, be too uncomfortable. So my mom uses the 1-to-1. For example, this one is 46.6% THC and 46.7% CBD. So a very close ratio there, but not a high. It's about half the amount of THC that you would find in other vape carts. So you're still going to get high. Don't get me wrong, but you're not going to feel overwhelmingly high. These products can be a little bit daunting to someone a little bit more elderly, because you actually have to have a battery for most of these to connect it to. So it's a cartridge. It looks like this. It's got some oil in it. A lot of them will have like a ceramic tip or a glass tip or whatever type of tip they put on them. But it actually has like a little bit of a thread here at the bottom. So you pull off the little plastic piece. I get a lot of people trying to put them on their cart with this piece attached. This is just to protect the bottom of the cartridge. But you will take this, and actually I should have brought a battery with me, and I didn't on me, but you should have, you can screw this right into a 510 thread battery. It'll be kind of like a long, almost look like a pencil or something of that sort, the same width as your cartridge. You screw it right into the top. It typically has a button or or it can be kind of a draw activated one, so it doesn't have a button. You just inhale on it to draw and to hit it. You don't actually need a button on it, which is some people really prefer. Some people like the buttons because a lot of times on those inhale draw activated ones, you don't have like a variable voltage, which means you can't set the heat setting. That is something I will point out as super, super important with vape carts. The higher your heat setting on your battery, the bigger of the hit you're going to get, like a bigger cloud, but the more like burnt your product may taste. So less flavor, bigger hit, lower temperature will be way more flavor, probably a smaller hit. So a lot of times people will like hook it up to their vape cart and then rip it outside or whatever, and they're like, I really got a hit off this. And I'm like, oh, you probably have it on the lowest setting, which is for me the only way that I'll rip a vape cart. I don't care if I have big clouds around me. I'm just, trying to enjoy my product and get the taste out of it. So my mom uses this. She screws it onto a traditional 510 thread battery. You'll find in the market there's a lot of like what we call proprietary batteries. So companies will come out with their own kind of form of a battery. Select has a click pod. Claw has a V-Fire. But a lot of these companies will come out with a pod that is like specific to their battery. So you have to buy their pod to go with their battery. Sounds kind of like a pain in the butt, but a lot of times when they hit the market and they become super popular, you can find them pretty easily, like anywhere. So those are kind of fun because they look really discreet. So like the traditional vape cartridge is kind of now known to be like the screw-on ones, like those are weed pens. But now these new pods, they look more like a nicotine vape or a breeze vape or whatever. So, some parents are more cautious about that with their children and stuff. But at the end of the day, I recommend a 1-to-1, whether it is a screw-on or a pod, some of these companies. But like I said, not a lot of companies offer that 1-to-1 option. Another company that I know did something I haven't seen before is Cushy Punch. We carry these. Recently came out with their new disposable line. So while I just mentioned these cartridges need to be screwed onto a battery, companies decided, let's make an all-in-one product that people can buy, pull out the packaging, and smoke right away. You don't need to buy a battery. You don't need to hook it up to anything. When you're done with it, throw it away. I'm not loving it for the environment, but at the end of the day, we are a society of convenience. So Cushy Punch packages these in their cool, colorful bags. They look like this. So when you pull it out of the bag, it is literally ready to go, ready to rip. It's kind of nice too. They put like the strain and like the product that you got on it. So if you throw your package away and you really like it, you can go ahead and reorder it. And it has a USB-C charger on the bottom. This is actually orange snow cone, and it overwhelmingly smells like oranges in here now that I open this. But it is actually a 2-to-1. So double the amount of THC than CBD, but hey, they're still trying. They're putting that CBD in there for people. This has become a super popular product in the market for me right now. So it's got what's on here as 13.5% CBD. There's also kind of a bunch of random other cannabinoids in really small doses in here, which is really cool to see. But there's also the total THC is also low, 56%. So what's fun about this is, again, it's not as low of THC as the Select 1-to-1, but the ratio, there's way less CBD to THC, so your psychoactivity will be higher. But again, a really good product for someone looking to get into cartridges, who wants to, feel high, but they're a little bit worried about it getting them too high, because concentrates are kind of that step up from flower, and concentrates, this is considered and falls under a concentrate. If you smoke flower for a long time, the potency on flower can really only get upwards of 35, 36, 37% THC, and that's like on the high end. But these, when you're talking 90% THC, doesn't get much higher than that. So people switch from flower to concentrates to try to enhance their high even more, to feel more high than they already do. So while these are very discreet and easy to use, they're also very huge tolerance builders. They'll build your tolerance very, very fast, which can be a good or a bad thing. But, not my number one recommendation necessarily for grandma. Because while it's not smoke from flower or carcinogens from paper, it is still inhaling something a little bit hotter into your lungs. So I would always go tinctures or edibles for grandma. But for anybody else moving into it, just try a 1-to-1. Like, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. If you want a regular cartridge, we have those too. You can smoke those too. But again, this one is 88.2% THC and 0.02% CBD. So this is just really built to get you high. And there's nothing wrong with that. We love that. But at the end of the day, we're starting someone on cannabis. We want to make sure they have the best experience. So, outside of Select, I'll just name drop Levitate. Really good, super good brand that we carry in the store. Ross from Doghouse also works with Arbor Kitchen. This is a product that I'm carrying from his line, and he's awesome. So I back a lot of the stuff that he puts out in the market. But these carts are a really good, bang for your buck, right? Like, they're not coming out here trying to be anything super fancy, but for their place in the market, they are a really good cartridge. So we sell these for like $15. So it's not bad. A 1 gram cartridge you can buy, and these are testing at 85% THC. So I like to tell people too, like, this is a kind of a cheaper option too to get into cannabis. Is edibles can be a little bit more costly depending on what you're getting and depending on what you find your dose to be, how often you have to buy them. But a vape cart, depending on how often you're hitting it, will last you a decent amount of time. Like, my mom keeps a vape cart for like 2 months, but that's not the standard person. There's people that will smoke a vape cart in 3 or 4 days, but those entering into cannabis, I doubt, will be smoking through a vape cart every 2 to 3 days. So something to think about. So many options in the market. They're convenient, on the go, easy to use. There's just always a vape cart at any dispensary. So while you might not find like a specific brand at a dispensary, you will find a 510 vape cart to screw into that battery that you've previously purchased. So those are the things I like to point out about, vape carts, is that while they're not my personal favorite, they have a time and place. I do have vape carts for those specific times and places, but I'm always reaching for flower, and I've mentioned that before. So the fun thing about vape carts is last thing I'll run through is you got the distillate vape carts I just showed you, which is kind of like your standard vape cartridge that we've had in the market for a while. And they're coming out with those on all different batteries. Like I said, the screw-on 510 is the standard. Now they have disposables. So like I showed you the Cushy Punch 2-to-1, Cushy Punch also just offers straight THC disposable vapes too. So they don't have CBD in them at that higher dose. They just are THC. So you can buy them from a lot of different companies, Mitten Extracts, Breeze, Canna, like Platinum Vape came out with the disposable. So there's a lot of disposables that if you're like not into the battery thing, or having to keep track of a battery or whatever, go ahead and buy the disposable. It is more expensive. Like a 1 gram disposable, $25 to $30. A 1 gram 510 thread, anywhere from $10 to $30. So kind of up to you on what you choose to buy. But from there, you've got some like live rosin pods that we've showed you on the solventless episode. You got some hash rosin pods, live resin pods. So once you get into vape cartridges, there's room to grow from a distillate cartridge. So we don't start people there on rosin pods because that's just not fair, not nice to make someone do a dab for their first time. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at getting people into cannabis, again, a reminder is to start low and go slow. No matter what you're doing, whether you're smoking weed or you're eating an edible or smoking a vape cart, I want to make sure that we are taking the time to explain why it's important that we'd rather you feel literally barely nothing than feel too much. So it is your, job as a family member or the advocate for cannabis to make sure that that's that's how the experience for yourself or for your friend or family is going to be. So, appreciate you guys tuning in, listening to this, and I'll see you next time on our next podcast.